The Photography Explained podcast is supported by rickmcavoyphotography.com/courses. More at the end.
How do you take care of a camera sensor? Hi, and a very warm welcome to episode 193, blimey, of the Photography Explained podcast. I'm your host, Rick, and in each episode, I will try to explain one photographic thing to you in plain English in less than 27 minutes-ish without the irrelevant details. I'm a professionally qualified photographer based in England with a lifetime of photographic experience, which I share with you in my podcast. Here is the answery bit. Digital camera sensors are important, sensitive, expensive bits of kit that need looking after. There are things we can do to protect them from bad stuff, but if bad stuff gets to them, there are things that we can do to remove that bad stuff. Don't worry, I'll explain what bad stuff is. In this episode, I will tell you how to prevent bad stuff from getting to your camera sensor, which is our first job, and what to do when you get bad stuff on your camera sensor. But for me, if I need to clean my camera sensor, I have failed with the prevention bit. I need to do a better job of looking after it. My camera, that is. Now, a clean sensor is a happy sensor. Remember that. And a photographer who's got a camera with a clean sensor should be a happy photographer. Now, we all need to keep our sensors clean. It just makes sense. It saves us time and it stops those horrible spots giving us work to do and degrading the quality of our images. So this is important. And yes, prevention is better than cure or cleaning, dear listener. Now, let's get into this one. Where is my camera sensor? Your camera sensor is located in the camera body, and you can see it when you take the lens off a mirrorless camera. It's a flat, shiny, rectangular thing at the back. Now, with a DSLR camera, you must take the lens off and raise the mirror and shutter to see the sensor. So on a mirrorless camera, the shutter is always open. It closes and then opens when you take a photo, which is a bit counterintuitive, I know. But on a DSLR, the shutter is down. When you take a photo, the shutter goes up and then down again. I think that's right. Now, the sensor's where the camera film used to be back in the days of film. And yeah, mirrorless cameras, they don't have mirrors. Well, you'd hope not, wouldn't you? But DSLR cameras do. And don't lift up your mirror on your DSLR camera and have a look at your sensor, because I don't think that's a good idea and the shutter's in the way anyway. Right, so what bad stuff am I talking about? Well, dust particles mainly, particulates in the air, hairs, anything small that you can find in the air that's looking for something flat and smooth to settle on, like your camera sensor, that kind of thing. Obviously, there's other things that you can get on there, but I'd hope we wouldn't have to talk about things like oils and, I don't know, peanut butter, margarine, anything, you know what I mean. You shouldn't be getting that stuff on your camera sensor, should you? But dust, it's pretty much unavoidable because you can't see dust, can you? So how does this bad stuff get on your camera sensor? Well, if you take your lens off and leave your mirrorless camera facing up for any amount of time, dust and other stuff in the air, it'll just settle on it. It just will. So don't do that. No one wants a dirty sensor. Now, dust particles are tiny. You can't see them. They land on everything and anything. They'll be on the lens mount. They'll be in the air. When you take your camera lens off, dust will get into the sensor chamber. It's just a fact of life. So let's not worry about it too much. It happens. We just need to know this and what we can do to prevent dust getting onto our sensor, and what to do if it has got on your sensor. How do I know if I've got bad stuff on my sensor? If you see little blurry splodges in your photos, you've probably got something on your sensor. They shouldn't be there, should they? If those little things weren't in your photo, like in a nice bright sky, you got these horrible little black specks or splodges, that's probably dust on your sensor. They're little specks that shouldn't be there. And they're visible in the light parts of the photo, such as the sky. And they're probably not visible in the darker parts of a photo, so they're not affecting that, but that doesn't mean that they're not a problem. Is this a problem? Well, potentially no. We need to remember this. If you're taking photos of things with no light bits in, You might have stuff on your sensor and you might never know it. But this bad stuff, it might adversely impact every photo without you knowing it. If the stuff's always been there, how will you know after all? Either way, it's a good idea to get rid of it. So prevention of dust and getting rid of dust is a good thing to do. So how do you find out if you got stuff on your sensor? Well, you can buy something called a sensor loop, which sits on the camera mount and it allows you to see the dust on your sensor. I got one, it's got a little light on it, and when I look through it, I can see little specks of dust. I can't see all of them. My eyes aren't great, to be honest with you. But there is another way of doing it. Take a photo of a white wall and look at that on your editing device of choice. This, of course, costs you nothing, and it's something that anybody can do. Now, there's a few things you need to do. Select a small aperture, a large number. Set the focus to manual. And this is the only time that I ever set my focus to manual. You turn the focus ring to the closest setting so the wall is completely out of focus. Select AV mode, a low ISO, and take a photograph of the white wall. You can do the same with if you're out and about, if you haven't got a white wall, to be fair, you can do the same when the sky's nice and bright. A nice blue sky works, actually, to be fair, but the lighter something is, the easier it gets, but a blue sky is fine. Next thing, look at the test image in your editing software of choice. You can zoom in on the photo, and if there's any dust or anything else on your sensor, it will actually show itself in the photo. And you might see tiny hairs. They get everywhere, even when you're as bald as I am. And the dust sensors, they're little black specks, and they can be easily removed. But if there's anything more sinister, such as smudges or smears or anything else, these will need more work, and these will need to be dealt with much more than the dust spots. You can get around them. In Lightroom, which is my editing software of choice, no, I'm not being paid to say this, I wish. In Lightroom, there's a tool you can use to check for dust spots, but remember, you might not see them in the dark parts of a photo, so doing the test I've told you about, it really is invaluable. And it's easy to do, and it's a good thing to be able to do because it helps you keep on top of the cleanliness of your sensor. In Lightroom, the tool is in the Remove tool. You just check the box, visualize spots, and the image is inverted. White becomes black, black becomes white. And all those nasties, they appear and can be removed in Lightroom from that photo. It's really clever. You get these white splodges because everything's inverted. White splodges that shouldn't be there, like in the sky. And you can very, very quickly get rid of them. And if you remove these nasties, that could be you done. You might not need to do any more. And also in Lightroom and with other editing software, I'm sure, you can copy and paste these removals to another photo. That might be you done. That might be all you need to do.
Do you want to start your own unsexy business offering a local service or a trade to your local community? Come check out the Owner Ops podcast. We bring on people like Sam, who has built a $22 million roofing company in 5 years. I've also brought on people like Brock, who generated $1.3 million of revenue in his first 7 months installing septic systems. If you are looking to build your own local service or trade business, come check out the Owner Ops podcast. That's ownerops.com, OWNROPS.com.
So if you've got a few small dust spots that can be quickly dealt with when processing your images, you might be good to go. And if that's you, dear listener, you can sit back and relax for the next bit. Well, the next bit's not too bad, actually. Actually, none of this is too bad because, you'll find out why at the end. In-camera sensor cleaning. Yes, really. My Canon 6D, or as my script says, MU, spell check didn't spot that. My Canon 6D has a sensor cleaning feature. It is called the self-cleaning sensor unit. If your camera's got this is the first thing that you do. And it should clean most of the spots off the sensor. And it's a good discipline to do this, I would say, every time you're sorting your kit out at the end of a shoot. And what it does, it shakes the dust off the camera sensor, would you believe? And it's a very, very cool feature. But what if I need to remove bad stuff from my sensor? Well, if you've established that there are dust sensors or hairs on your sensor, and the in-camera cleaning thing doesn't do it, you need to do something else, and this is another simple procedure. My gear for keeping my sensor clean, it's a hurricane blower, also known as a rocket blower, and my other piece of kit's a microfiber towel. It's a clean one, which is in my camera bag. It's washed just with the other laundry, and it's in my bag, and that's all I have. All you need for this is an air blower. Now, there are all sorts of different ones, but the one I use is called a hurricane blower. It cost me about a tenner many years ago, and it lives in its own zip-up case, keeping it nice and clean. Now, it's important to keep this stuff clean and dust-free. Very important. How does the air blower work? Well, you squeeze it, and it blows air out. And that's it. Right, nice and simple, eh? So how do you remove dust from your sensor? You take the lens off, you turn the camera so the sensor is facing down, and you blow a few puffs of air into the sensor chamber. Put the lens back on, take another photo, and see if the dust spots have gone. If they have, happy days. If not, you might need to repeat the process, check the photo, and you might be done. Hopefully with a couple of goes of this, you're good to go. And be sensible where you do this. A clean tabletop should be fine. I use my desk in my home office, which I clean with a standard wet household cleaning product just to get rid of any dust on the desk. I let it dry, and I'm good to go. That's all I do. You can get anti-static mats. There's all sorts of things you can get, but if you're sensible, you shouldn't really need them. So that's my sensor cleaning regime. That's it. But what do you do if this doesn't work? What if you've got bad stuff on there that's more than dust? What do you do with it? Well, you've got to get your sensor cleaned, and this is where I stop. Now, I know in the last episode I said I would get a sensor cleaning kit and do this myself, but I've not done it. And I'm sorry, Blake in Alabama, I'm not going to answer this bit of the question, how do you clean a camera sensor? And there are several reasons why. If my sensor needs cleaning, I'm going to take it to a camera shop that does this and pay for it to be done correctly. I only need to do this every 2 or 3 years, so it's okay for me to do it. I used to get my sensor cleaned at the photography show back in the day. I haven't been for a few years, but what they used to do, they used to have a free sensor cleaning service, and some poor soul would spend all day cleaning all these cameras that visitors to the show had handed in. And yeah, it was free and it was great, and don't know if they still do it, but that reminds me, I need to get to the photography show next year. I definitely do. If you want to buy a cleaning kit, there are many of them. There are many different sensor cleaning kits, different products, different devices, different techniques, different ways of cleaning a camera sensor. And when I looked into it, I couldn't narrow it down to one specific way of cleaning my sensor. So what I'm not going to do is tell you to do something that I don't know how to do. That would be wrong of me. So this is as far as I go. I'm not going to clean my camera sensor. If I need it doing, I'm afraid I'm going to pay somebody. It's not that expensive, and considering what I do for a living, I guess that's fair enough, isn't it? So sorry if I'm not telling you how to clean a camera sensor, but I don't know. Right, let's get back to, for me, what is the more important part. It's avoiding getting bad stuff on your sensor. This I can talk about because this is the thing that I do. Not getting the stuff on your sensor in the first place, it has to be the way to go. It has to be. Sensor dust, it's bad dust, isn't it? Now, never changing your lens. That's one way of never getting dust on your sensor. But that's not an option, of course it's not. If you've only got one lens, you're fine. But if you've got more than one lens, you need to be able to change your lenses whenever you want to. But every time you change a lens, you're risking getting dust on the sensor. So there's things that you can do to reduce the chance of that happening. Firstly, be careful where you change your lenses. Now, I'm not saying you can only do this in a dust-free environment. While that's ideal, what's a dust-free environment? I don't know. I live in a house. It's got dust, and that's just real life, isn't it? No, whether you're changing lenses in your home, work, car, in a field, on a beach, or on a major construction site, there are a few things that you should always do, which will help minimize the chances of getting dust on your sensor. First off, have the front and rear lens caps on all your lenses. When you're at home or wherever it is that you're going to be cleaning your camera, clean the rear lens mount and the lens mount on the body using a slightly damp cloth and the air blower. I use a very slightly damp microfiber cloth very carefully on the lens mount just to make sure I get rid of all the dust off it. You can use little swabs or cotton buds, all sorts of things. You've got to be very, very careful. You don't want to get any water in the sensor chamber. Oh, and turn your camera off when you're changing lenses. Less electrical stuff is going on, and that might attract dust. So that's another very important thing. Never take your lens off with your camera on. Now, I was told that back in the day, and I think it still applies, but it's not going to harm you to do that, is it? And another thing is clean the rear lens element as well as you clean the front lens element, which I hope you do. Yeah, keep the camera lens squeaky clean and as dust-free as you can, because this is one of the most obvious ways of getting dust on your sensor, isn't it? Dust transfer from the lens, because when the lens meets the camera mount, it's going to disturb any dust on there. That's why it's important to physically remove any dust with a cloth. A very, very mildly damp cloth, that is. Not a wet cloth, okay? Have a place you can put your camera and lens on, even if that's nothing more than a clean towel on the ground. That's better than not having a towel. And I always have a lens on my camera, so all I'm doing is changing lenses. My cameras are stored in bags with the lenses on, always. To change a lens, hold the camera with the sensor facing down, take the rear lens cap off the lens you're putting on, remove the lens on your camera and put the other lens on. Having the camera facing down stops any dust falling in there, doesn't it? We're using gravity. And any dust in there may just fall to the ground anyway. If you have your camera with the sensor facing up, you're increasing the chance of dust landing on it, aren't you? So, dead simple, have your camera facing down and you're reducing the chances. It's all simple stuff, but it's very effective and it does make a real difference. And keep your lenses somewhere safe and dry. And your camera body, of course. Keep your camera body and lenses clean and you will already reduce the chances of getting bad stuff on your camera sensor. And this is a discipline you need to stick with all the time. You need to be meticulous with your camera gear and it will pay you back for many, many years. Now, I keep my cameras and lenses stored in bags in a cupboard. I'll occasionally clean the bag to get rid of any dust, but that's that really. Just common sense measures that will reduce the chance of getting dust on a sensor. Okay, the talky bit. Well, just one thing really. This episode was meant to be how do you clean a camera sensor, which was a question asked by listener Blake from Alabama. Hi Blake, I hope you're well. And apologies. Cleaning a camera sensor for me, it's a last resort. If my camera sensor needs cleaning, I have failed to look after my camera correctly. So look after your sensor, protect it and cherish it like your favourite child, pet or whatever. If you never need to clean your sensor, as far as I'm concerned, you've done well and that is my aim. So apologies Blake, but I'm answering the bit that I'm comfortable answering and no more. What if I use a phone to take photos? Well, you haven't got this problem, have you? Because the sensor is behind the lens or lenses. Nice and simple. Move on, Rick. What do? I hate cleaning my camera sensor. I hate it. And I don't mind admitting this to you. Now, the reason is that I cleaned a sensor once and it was worse after cleaning than it was before. I had to get someone to sort this out and I said to myself, never again. More on that in a little while. And I rarely change lenses, which is a great way of protecting my camera sensor from bad stuff. Because every time you change a lens, you're increasing the chance of getting dust on your sensor. If we think about it, if you never change a lens, your sensor isn't exposed to dust, is it? But that's just not a sensible approach, is it? We have to be able to use all our lenses. That's the whole point of having a DSLR, isn't it? Getting back to what I do. I check every photo I edit for dust spots. And I do this in Lightroom. And in Lightroom, you can quickly remove dust spots. And that's why this isn't a huge issue for me. I don't need to worry about cleaning my sensor because I very rarely get stuff on it. But that's me. And I'm fortunate, I know. But It's not a big problem. Sometimes I need to change lenses on a construction site. This does happen. And if I have to do this, I'm just going to find the least dusty place possible and change my lens there. So I'll find this least dusty place, whatever that might be, and I'll change the lens and I'll do all the things that I told you about. And I might even change my lens inside my camera bag just to reduce the chances of getting any dust on my sensor. Because if I don't have to remove dust spots when I'm editing, it's one less thing to do, isn't it? And if I do this, I'm going to give the inside of the bag a good old clean when I get home. Because I can't avoid working in dusty environments with the work I do. So I have to have things in place that help me to change lenses when I need to. And I've also cleaned the rear lens mount, the lens mount on the camera body, and the caps that go on both, the body cap and the rear lens cap. I always keep these clean as well because they can get bits of dust on them as well. And I never leave the camera sensor or the rear lens element exposed. They're always covered. Now, I've mentioned before about taking the photograph of the white wall out of focus, maximum aperture, blah, blah, blah. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do this with my camera. I'm going to put the photos on the podcast website so you can see what I'm talking about. That's photographyexplainedpodcast.com. Just go to the episode page and the photos will be roughly where I'm speaking now, because that's where you can find the script as well. Hopefully you'll find that helpful and what I'm going to do. I know I said this last episode, didn't I? I'm going to clean the sensor, and I didn't. But I'll do this because this is what I do actually do. So I'm going to take a photo of a white wall, show you the dust spots on my sensor, do the blow brush thing, and hopefully you can see the difference. Right, that's work for me to do. And I only get the sensor clean when I have to, which I haven't done for quite a few years now. So I'll be interested to see how clean my sensor is. That's going to be revealing, isn't it? And I'm very, very careful. My cleaning regime is cheap and simple, but very effective. It's the being careful bit that helps me reduce the dust and other bad stuff getting to my camera sensor. And the occasional test shot to check my sensor is nice and clean helps as well. And that's what I do. That's all I do, which isn't that much, is it? Well, it's not a lot, really. Again, prevention, better than cleaning. That could be a strapline, couldn't it? Okay, the good, the bad, and what I did once. Well, a long time ago, I bought a lens cleaning kit. I didn't read the instructions properly. I didn't clean the sensor properly. I just rushed through, cockily thinking I knew what I was doing because I used to be like that, which thinking back is quite shocking to me. No, my cleaning process was, clumsy, lackluster, and completely unsuitable for the image sensor. And it didn't end well. There were smears on the sensor that weren't there before I started cleaning. My use of the sensor swab, it made the sensor more dirty. There were smears on it. How can I do that? And the dust spots and the other stuff on the sensor, they'd merely been moved somewhere else on the sensor and probably made worse by having the liquid introduced. So I did a really bad job. And I had to pay somebody a decent amount of money to fix this, which they did. So I've learned my lesson. And I also spent a small fortune on cleaning stuff and other stuff that I didn't know how to use. Things like compressed air, spinning brushes, swabs, liquids, all sorts of stuff. So I am scarred by this experience. So please don't do what I did. If you're going to do this, as in clean your camera sensor, be sure about what you're doing and follow the supplier's instructions. They will tell you the best practice for the products you have bought. And this is another reason why I'm not telling you how to clean a camera sensor. If you're going to do this, make sure that you're happy doing it, you're confident, you know what you're doing. Don't do this on a whim like I did, because you could end up having to replace your sensor, which I wasn't far off. Right, I'm going to move on there. Some thoughts from the last episode. Well, I really enjoyed the last episode, which has been well received, and it gave me some great new material to share. Now, I never thought I'd be talking about the Mona Lisa on the podcast. And there was a seriously good point that I want to return to. Well, there's two, actually. The first one, which I did mention last episode, so this won't be a surprise to you if you've heard it, One thing I hate is everyone with the phones over their heads filming or photographing the same thing. It is ruining that thing for everybody else, and I really do hate it. I know it's a sign of the times. I know everybody wants to capture everything, but it doesn't stop me hating it, does it? And the other thing, why is everybody photographing and recording the same thing when they're going into a museum, an art gallery, or other such places? What is everybody going to do with the same photo? Where do all these photos go? How many identical photos are being stored on the planet? I dread to think. There must be a better way, other than just not taking any photos and being present in what you're doing. I mean, are you actually enjoying it? Do you actually look at all these photos you take of the things that everybody else is taking photos of? Oh, I don't know, people these days, eh? Right, shut up, Rick. Next episode. I don't know. I'm not sure. I haven't got a title. I need to come up with something, so let's leave the next episode as a surprise. Well, it's a surprise to me as well as to you. But if you've got an idea, let me know. Let me know, please. If you've got a question you'd like me to answer, email me, sales@rickmcavoyphotography.co.uk. I know I still need that shorter email address, don't I? Or visit the podcast website, photographyexplainedpodcast.com/start. Or you can text me from the podcast feed. So many ways to get in touch, like Blake from Alabama did. Blake, thank you ever so much again for getting in touch. Great to hear from you. I absolutely love hearing from my listeners. Absolutely love it. And with that, I'll say I'm done. This episode was brought to you by a coffee, which I consumed before I settled down in my homemade acoustically cushioned recording emporium. Yep, this is a late morning recording, which will be followed quite swiftly by a cheese and pickle sandwich, but no crisps. I've been Rick McAvoy. Thanks again very much for listening to my small but perfectly formed podcast, it says here, and for giving me 27-ish minutes of your valuable time. Now, after I've edited out the mistakes and other bad stuff, this episode will be about 27 minutes long. Thanks for listening. Take care. Stay safe. Cheers from me, Rick.
My brand new course, How to Become a Real Estate Photographer, straight talking advice for beginners to get you making money quickly and build a career, is available to buy now. Find out more at rickmcavoyphotography.com/courses.